4:22 a.m., Port Everglades, Florida, getting hammered by wind and rain. The concrete piers are slick. The dockyards turned into rivers of black water pouring down the loading ramps. Sitting quiet at berth 14 is a luxury cargo charter vessel. If you were just walking by, you'd think it was a logistics ship getting ready for an early run. Running lights are off. The only light is the faint amber from the dock's sodium lamps cutting through the downpour. But tonight, that ship is the target of a massive federal takedown. Then the darkness gets ripped open by red and blue strobes. Armored vehicles converge on the port entrance. Leading the assault is a modified Lenco Bearcat G3 armored truck. It doesn't stop at the fortified security gate. The 12,000-pound vehicle tears through the steel barricade like wet paper, throwing sparks and twisted metal across the wet asphalt. At the same time, a tactical team drops in from above. Agents from the FBI's hostage rescue team and HSI's special response team fast rope from a hovering helicopter down to the deck of the ship. 35 feet on a static line, hitting the wet steel in seconds. Boots splash in the puddles as they take defensive positions behind the ship's massive winches and cargo cranes. The gangway is heavily fortified. The Bearcat doesn't hesitate. The driver throws the armored nose straight into the composite gangway doors, smashing them off their heavy hinges. Flash bangs go off, throwing arcs of blinding white light across the cargo hold. The concussive shockwaves rattle the bulkheads. Agents rush inside, their weapon-mounted lights cutting through thick smoke. Within 90 seconds, 14 individuals are face down on the steel decking, wrists secured in flex cuffs. But the men in handcuffs aren't your usual street-level traffickers. They are wearing tailored suits, now soaked in rain and grease. They are licensed commercial pilots. They are mechanics with high-level FAA certifications, and they are the kingpins of a ghost fleet. This is the takedown of a $610 million narco-charter empire. And the whole thing started because one federal inspector noticed a tiny mistake, a missing weight on a shipping document. 112 pounds. How did one minor paperwork anomaly bring down an entire airborne cartel? To understand how this network got dismantled, you have to go back 9 months. Late summer, sweltering afternoon at the Fort Lauderdale-Hollywood International Airport. The tarmac is shimmering in the brutal Florida heat. Customs and Border Protection Inspector Marcus Vance is working the primary cargo manifest desk. Vance is a veteran. 15 years staring at commercial import documents. He knows what a normal flight looks like. He knows what a lie looks like on paper. Flight 88 Charlie is a private charter arriving from an airstrip in Sinaloa, Mexico, registered to a company called Apex Aero Charters. The manifest declares the flight is carrying an empty aviation cargo pallet. The document says the pallet is being returned to the United States for routine maintenance. Empty pallets are common in aviation logistics. They get moved around the globe every single day. But Inspector Vance stares at the digital scale readout on his terminal. The system shows the pallet weighs exactly 112 pounds more than the standard empty weight for that specific aluminum cargo pallet. 112 pounds. That is the weight of a grown man. 2 heavy duffel bags. In the world of international freight, a 100-pound discrepancy almost always gets chalked up to water absorption, scale calibration, or a simple data entry error. Any other inspector on any other day would have stamped the manifest and waved the plane through. But Vance's gut says something is off. He walks out to the tarmac. He physically inspects the pallet. He knocks on the aluminum siding. The echo is wrong. It sounds hollow. He finds a false bottom. Inside the hollowed-out aluminum frame, vacuum-sealed bricks of fentanyl are packed tight in industrial grease. The grease is there specifically to throw off the scent of the airport's narcotic detection dogs. Inspector Vance secures the aircraft immediately and flags the flight. He sends an urgent report to the El Paso Intelligence Center, known as EPIC. He also forwards the intelligence to the Homeland Security Investigations Office in Miami. The contraband gets pulled. But the real investigation isn't about the drugs. It is about the airplane itself. When HSI Special Agent Sarah Conley pulls the tail number N8865C, she expects to find a stolen aircraft or a washed-up smuggler. Instead, she finds a corporate puzzle. Apex Aero Charters is a fully licensed, fully legal aviation entity, clean FAA registration, pristine maintenance records, a legitimate website offering luxury private jet charters for wealthy executives. But Conley notices something strange. Over the past 3 years, Apex Aero has purchased 14 private aircraft. They own a fleet of long-range Learjets, Bombardier Globals, and Cessna Citations. The total value of their fleet is over $220 million. Yet their declared charter revenue is almost zero. No high-profile celebrity clients. No major corporate accounts. Agent Conley figures out that Apex Aero is not a charter company. It is a front, a highly sophisticated ghost fleet operating completely in the blind spots of the Federal Aviation Administration's civil registry. The cartel has moved past smuggling drugs. They are buying their own airline. This discovery triggers a massive multi-agency task force. The FBI's Organized Crime Task Force in Miami joins HSI, the DEA, and the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. They codename the operation Operation Nightfall. The task force sets up a dedicated command center in a secure warehouse near the Miami airport. Their goal is simple: map the entire network, follow the money, and identify every single pilot, mechanic, and financier involved. But taking down a flying cartel is incredibly difficult. You cannot put a tracking device on a plane that travels at 500 miles per hour and crosses international borders in a matter of hours. The first obstacle they face is the sheer scale of the FAA registry. The federal database tracks over 200,000 private aircraft. The cartel knows this. They use a tactic called registration hopping. They change the tail numbers on their jets every few weeks. They use shell companies in Delaware, Wyoming, and the Cayman Islands to hide true ownership. For the first 3 months of the investigation, the task force struggles to keep up with the paper trail. Every time they identify an aircraft, it vanishes from the registry. But the agents get around this by shifting focus from the planes to the pilots. The FAA requires mandatory medical certifications for commercial pilots every 6 months. The task force starts cross-referencing the FAA's medical registry with known cartel associates. They identify a network of 17 pilots operating out of small, uncontrolled airstrips in Texas, Arizona, and Florida. I spent hours going through the federal court records for this case, and one detail kept nagging at me. The cartel was not hiring amateur smugglers. They were recruiting seasoned, retired commercial airline pilots, men with thousands of hours of flight time, men who knew how to read weather radar, how to communicate with air traffic control, and most importantly, how to blend in perfectly with legitimate private aviation traffic. Before the undercover operation could fully launch, the task force needed to process the initial evidence pulled from Vance's pallet. In a sterile, brightly lit forensic bay at the HSI field office in Miami, forensic technicians carefully dismantled the aluminum pallet. The industrial grease was scraped away, revealing 50 pounds of pure, uncut fentanyl. But the real breakthrough did not come from the powder. It came from the pallet itself. A forensic accountant noticed a small, stamped serial number etched into the underside of the aluminum frame. The serial number traced back to a specialized aviation manufacturing facility in Phoenix, Arizona. When agents pulled the facility's shipping records, they found that this specific pallet was one of 40 identical units sold to a shell company in Delaware. That shell company was directly linked to Apex Aero charters. This single piece of physical evidence gave the task force their first concrete thread connecting the Mexican cartels to the American aviation infrastructure. The task force needs eyes inside the operation. They need an undercover agent who can fly a multi-million-dollar jet and convince hardened cartel members he is one of them. They find their man in an HSI pilot named Daniel Reyes. Agent Reyes is a former Air Force pilot with over 4,000 flight hours. He gets a fake identity. He gets a seized aircraft that the government has scrubbed clean. Reyes infiltrates the network by hanging around the high-end executive hangars at the Fort Lauderdale Executive Airport. He flashes a fake business card, offering his services as a freelance charter pilot for cash. Within weeks, he gets approached by a man named Julian Vega. Vega is the chief logistics coordinator for the Ghost Fleet. Vega offers Reyes a simple job: fly a Learjet 60 from Fort Lauderdale to a private ranch in rural Mexico. No questions asked. Payment is $50,000 in clean cash upon landing. Agent Reyes takes the job. The task force wires the Learjet with hidden surveillance cameras and state-of-the-art tracking devices. On October 14th, Reyes takes off. The flight is planned carefully to avoid major radar coverage. The cartel has given him a specific flight path that dips into the Gulf of Mexico, exploiting a known gap in the customs and border protection radar coverage. When Reyes lands on the dirt strip in Mexico, the scale of the operation becomes obvious. The runway is guarded by men with automatic weapons, but they aren't loading duffel bags of drugs onto the plane. They are loading heavy, unmarked aluminum cargo containers, and they are handing Reyes a thick stack of bank straps, United States currency, vacuum sealed. Over the next 4 months, Agent Reyes completes 11 of these ghost flights. Each time, he returns with millions of dollars in laundered cash. Each time, the cartel uses a different aircraft. The wiretaps installed on Julian Vega's encrypted phones reveal the scope of the financial machine. The IRS agents on the task force start mapping the money flow. They trace wire transfers from shell companies in Miami to luxury aircraft brokers in Europe. Most people assume cartel money gets smuggled out of the country in hidden vehicle compartments or underground tunnels, but the evidence tells a completely different story. The cartel is literally flying the money out of the United States in luxury jets, disguised as legitimate aviation cargo. The speed of the laundering is staggering. Millions of dollars get picked up in cities like Chicago, New York, and Los Angeles. The cash is driven to rural airstrips in Texas and Florida. It gets loaded onto private jets. And within 3 hours, it is sitting in a hangar in Mexico, completely untracked by the United States Treasury. During the 4th month of the undercover operation, Agent Reyes was told to fly to a secluded ranch outside of Culiacan. He was told to wait inside the cockpit while the cargo was loaded. But Vega invited him into the main house to discuss a permanent position within the organization. Reyes agreed, knowing the surveillance team was monitoring his every move. Inside the sprawling, marble-floored hacienda, Reyes sat across from Vega and a man introduced only as El Contador, the accountant. El Contador was a ghost. No digital footprint, no known photographs, no criminal record. He spoke perfect, unaccented English. He laid out a ledger on the table, showing Reyes exactly how the cartel moved their money. He explained that they had moved past cash. They were purchasing real estate in cash through straw buyers in Florida and Texas, then taking out legitimate mortgages against those properties to clean the funds. Reyes memorized every detail, every name, every account number. When he got back to the United States, he debriefed for 12 straight hours. The intelligence he gathered from that single conversation at the ranch gave the IRS enough evidence to freeze over $40 million in domestic assets. What strikes me about this case is the sheer arrogance of the network. They were not hiding in the shadows. They were operating in plain sight, parking their jets next to legitimate billionaires at FBOs across the country. They relied on the fact that federal agents are overwhelmed and that the FAA registry is fundamentally broken. Here's the part that doesn't make sense on the surface. The FAA is supposed to track every aircraft in the sky, but the system relies on voluntary compliance. If a plane doesn't file a flight plan, and it isn't near a major airport, it is practically invisible. The cartel weaponized this loophole. They turned luxury aviation into a high-speed, invisible pipeline for drugs and cash. By month 6, the task force has mapped the entire network. But the cartel is getting nervous. Julian Vega, the logistics coordinator, starts to suspect a leak. He changes his encrypted phones 3 times in 1 month. He demands that Agent Reyes undergo a polygraph test in a hotel room in Cancun. The task force is terrified. If Reyes gets exposed, he will be executed within minutes. The solution requires extreme tradecraft. The FBI technical team remotely hacks the hotel security system. They bribe the polygraph examiner, a corrupt former Mexican police officer, to rig the test results. When Reyes sits down for the exam, he is wired with a microscopic heart rate monitor. The FBI team sits in a van outside the hotel, feeding him the correct answers through a tiny, in-ear communicator. Reyes passes the polygraph. Vega is satisfied. The operation continues. The case feels closed in the task force's mind. They have the pilots. They have the money. They have the wiretaps. But what agents didn't know yet was that the cartel was preparing a massive final shipment. A shipment so large it would require a cargo vessel, not just airplanes. By month 8, the wiretaps light up with frantic activity. Julian Vega orders the fleet to stand down. All flights are grounded. The cartel is changing its logistics model. They are moving away from airborne smuggling. The IRS agents notice a massive transfer of funds. $20 million is wired to a shipping company in Port Everglades, Florida. The task force scrambles. They find out the cartel has purchased a luxury cargo charter vessel. The ship is named the Ocean Phantom, a 200-foot vessel equipped with a helipad, luxury quarters, and a massive, climate-controlled cargo hold. The cartel has decided the skies are too hot. They are moving their entire operation to the sea. The tactical commanders make a critical decision. They cannot let the Ocean Phantom leave port. If it enters international waters, it will be nearly impossible to track. The Coast Guard gets placed on standby. But taking a ship of that size requires overwhelming, instantaneous force. Unpopular opinion, but the FAA's Civil Aviation Registry is practically an open door for transnational crime. I'll say what most won't. The fact that a cartel can purchase, register, and operate a fleet of 14 luxury jets under fake names for 3 years without a single red flag is a massive, systemic failure. It is a failure that falls squarely on the bureaucratic disconnect between aviation regulators and federal law enforcement. The system is built for convenience, not security. And criminals are exploiting that convenience to move billions of dollars right over our heads. Put yourself in Inspector Vance's shoes for a second. You are looking at a digital scale. You see a 112-pound difference. Do you pull the pallet off the line? Do you ground the plane, knowing it will cause thousands of dollars in delays and mountains of paperwork? Most people would let it slide. But that single decision cracked the entire case wide open. What would you have done at 3 p.m. on a Friday with a missing weight on a manifest? As the task force prepares for the maritime raid, they hit another wall. The Ocean Phantom is docked at a highly secure, private cargo terminal at Port Everglades. The terminal is surrounded by razor wire fences and heavily armed private security guards contracted by the cartel. A standard Coast Guard boarding party would end up in a prolonged, bloody firefight. The element of surprise would be lost instantly. The tactical commanders decide on a multi-pronged dynamic entry. They need to hit the ship from the land, the air, and the sea at the same time. They assemble a strike force of over 120 federal agents. The FBI hostage rescue team provides the rotary wing air support. HSI provides the primary dynamic entry team. The Coast Guard cutter Diamondback positions itself at the mouth of the port channel, ready to blockade the ship if it tries to flee. The final piece of the puzzle falls into place on March 14th. The task force intercepts a message from Vega. The Ocean Phantom is scheduled to depart at exactly 5 a.m. the next morning. It is carrying the largest single shipment of the year. 4,200 pounds of narcotics hidden inside luxury furniture, and $300 million in untracked cash. The task force sets the raid for 4:15 a.m. The cartel thought they were invisible. They thought the sea would hide them. But within 24 hours, their entire empire would collapse. 4:15 a.m., the rain is coming down in sheets. The task force moves into position. The Bearcat G3 idles 3 blocks away from the port entrance. 2 Black Hawk helicopters hover silently over the intracoastal waterway, their navigation lights completely blacked out. 4:22 a.m., the go code is given. Execute. The Bearcat surges forward, smashing through the port's main security gate. The alarm sirens start wailing, but they get drowned out by the roar of helicopter rotors. The Blackhawks descend over the cargo terminal. HSI agents toss fast ropes out the doors. They rappel directly onto the deck of the Ocean Phantom. At the same time, the Bearcat rams the fortified gangway leading onto the ship. The heavy steel gate explodes inward. Flashbang grenades get thrown into the bridge and the lower cargo holds. The sound is deafening. Blinding white light strobes across the dark, rain-slicked deck. The cartel's private security guards are completely caught off guard. They are trained to intimidate rival gangs, not to fight a heavily armed federal tactical team. Most of them drop their weapons instantly and surrender. A few try to barricade themselves inside the luxury cabins, but the HSI agents use heavy explosive breaching charges to blow the mahogany doors off their hinges. Within 3 minutes, the entire ship is secured. 14 individuals are arrested on the spot. Among them is Julian Vega, the chief logistics coordinator. He gets found in the master suite, frantically trying to destroy a laptop. He is tackled to the ground and handcuffed before he can wipe the hard drive. As the sun rises over Port Everglades, the scale of the bust becomes clear. Agents start processing the massive cargo hold of the Ocean Phantom. They find millions of dollars in vacuum-sealed cash stacked floor to ceiling. They find 4,200 pounds of fentanyl and cocaine hidden inside custom-made wooden crates. But the raid on the ship is just the beginning. It is the signal for a nationwide, simultaneous takedown. As Vega gets arrested in Florida, tactical teams across the country start executing search warrants. In Houston, Texas, DEA agents raid a private hangar, seizing 2 luxury jets and arresting 4 pilots. In Phoenix, Arizona, FBI teams breach a suburban mansion, finding an underground vault filled with $20 million in cash. In Atlanta, IRS agents arrest the cartel's primary financier at a high-end country club. By the end of the week, the task force has secured 42 federal indictments. They have seized 14 luxury aircraft. They have taken 4,200 pounds of narcotics off the streets. And they have mapped over $610 million in laundered funds. The Ghost Fleet is grounded. The federal courthouse in downtown Miami is surrounded by a convoy of black SUVs. The defendants get paraded into the building in shackles. Julian Vega, the pilots, and the financiers are facing life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The United States Attorney calls it the most significant aviation-related narco bust in American history. The court transcripts run over 400 pages, but it's a single footnote that tells the real story. The footnote details the exact moment Inspector Vance flagged the empty pallet. 112 pounds. That tiny anomaly unraveled a $610 million empire. The ghost fleet is gone. The kingpins are behind bars. The planes are sitting in a secure government impound lot. But the problem hasn't disappeared. One detail that stuck with me is how easily the cartel adapted. When the skies became too dangerous, they just bought a ship. They pivoted from aviation to maritime in a matter of weeks. It shows a level of operational flexibility that federal agencies simply cannot match. The bureaucracy moves too slowly. The cartels move like corporations. The FAA registry is still broken. The blind spots in the radar coverage are still there. During the 9-month investigation, the task force identified 17 active shadow charter pilots working for this specific network, but court documents reveal a chilling fact. Aviation intelligence analysts estimate there are at least 18 more shadow charter pilots still operating independently across the continent. They are still flying unregistered charter flights, moving untracked cash and contraband right now, hidden in the vast, anonymous expanse of the sky. Will this massive raid stop them, or will they just adapt and find a new loophole? Comment YES or no. We track what comes next. Subscribe to the Bureau Files so the next case finds you first. The Ocean Phantom sits empty at berth 14, its hull impounded by the federal government. The rain washes the blood and the glass from the deck. In an evidence vault in Miami, a single aluminum cargo pallet sits on a steel shelf, battered, grease-stained, false bottom and all. It is the pallet that started it all. 112 pounds. A tiny lie that brought down a ghost fleet. But somewhere, in a private hangar far from the coast, an engine is sputtering to life. The night is dark. The skies are vast, and the ghost flights are still crossing the border.